Welcome into our lives.
And welcome to the Expanders Club podcast.
We're so happy to have you.
Join us as we embark on a journey of deep exploration, soul searching, and asking the hard questions.
With the goal of truly understanding the most aligned, empowered, and purposeful versions of ourselves.
We want to live an extraordinary life, and we're willing to dig deep to find out what it takes.
Buckle up. You're about to meet a new version of yourself, an extraordinary one. Hello, my friends. Welcome. Welcome to the Expanders Club podcast. I am your host, Brooke Harris, and I am here to hold your hand, be your bestie, help guide you, also join you on the path of expansion, of evolution, of, your soul's journey to your biggest, brightest, highest self and life in this lifetime. And aren't we having fun? I say that as we've come out of, the eclipse portal, a very intense time in the world, whether you're into the cosmos and astrology or just paying attention to the news, which I try to do minimally, or just reading the energy. It is intense and interesting and so important that we manage our own energy and ourselves and take care of ourselves right now. So I hope that you are all doing that. For those of you who have been around for a bit, hey, how are you? Sending you so much love. And for those of you who are new, welcome. This is a podcast where we talk about all things growth, whether it be health and wellness, spirituality, really a lot of spirituality. That's kind of the world that I am in, and they kind of both and all go together, but we are really here to evolve and understand all the big hard questions. What's the meaning of life? How do we do this? How do we live up to our highest timeline? How do we, be the best humans we can be? How do we tap into the quantum? All the things we cover. And today, guys, I'm going to keep the intro short because today's episode is profound. There's so much wisdom and so many good nuggets. I highly recommend getting out your notebook while listening or getting out the notes section of your phone, because we have a really special guest. It is my coach, Brian Evans. He's been coaching. I've been working with him for 2 years as a coach. Came to him at a time where, before this podcast existed, where I was just at my rock bottom, in a very low place, burnt out, exhausted, didn't know who I was, what my purpose was, what I wanted out of life. Thought I had a purpose and realized wow, this purpose I've been chasing for so long absolutely is not. We're kind of looking around and saying there's got to be more, there's got to be more to life. And I found Brian, and he has coached me the past 2 years through massive expansion and transformation. If you've been around listening to the podcast, you kind of know some of it. But there's a lot of it that I will never even be able to describe. And of course, it's Brian's there to hold my hand and guide me and coach me, and I have to do the work. And anyone who is working with a coach, you have to put in the work to get out of it what you're hoping for or better. But I highly recommend working with a coach, working with some kind of guide, even if it's just for the accountability. The check-ins and the accountability of meeting your goals. Reflection is a huge piece. Brian reflects back to me a lot of things that I need to see or hear. It has been such a gift. He has been such a gift, and you guys will see as you listen to the episode. He is just so incredible. He has so much wisdom. He has been a coach for over 20 years. He is one of 4,000 board certified coaches. So he is absolutely the real deal. And I feel like with Brian, I can talk to him about any topic. To be honest, when I first went to him, I kind of went under the guidelines of I need a business coach. And like that is just barely scratching the surface of what he's good at. So I'm excited to introduce you guys to him. Excited for you to get some exposure, excited for you to access his wisdom. We talk about some big things and we kind of cover a wide range of things, but we definitely talk a lot about modern mysticism, spirituality, the purpose and goal of like our souls and this human experience. Like I said, Brian shares a lot of tips and tricks and tools. Like you will feel the coach vibes throughout the episode. Like he can't help but share things in a way that allows people to understand and process and access them, and like kind of gives a little tool and a gift at the end of every little lesson that he's sharing. It's just like the way he speaks and the way he forms his responses and sentences. It's lovely. You'll see. But as I was editing, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much wisdom here and there's so much great information. So I'm really excited for you guys to experience the information. I'm excited for you guys to experience Brian. If you've ever considered coaching or having a guide, like if you want to connect with Brian, I'll put his info in the show notes, or you can DM me and ask me questions. I highly, highly recommend it. I do not know how people go through life without a coach or a buddy or some kind of guide. Like it has just, I think where Brian and I have gotten in 2 years, it would have taken a lifetime, but at least 10 years in traditional therapy. And that is not to knock traditional therapy at all. You know, I have done traditional therapy. I took myself to a therapist when I was 20, with the goal of not wanting my childhood to impact my future. And it just never resonated. I did it for a few years. It never resonated with me. And since then, I have been kind of on this seeking, discovering, testing journey of all kinds of different healers and coaches and light workers and helpers. And it takes a team. Brian's not the only resource that I've had over these past years to help with my transformation. It certainly has been. I have curated essentially a team. Brian is the one I work with most consistently. We work together twice a month. And I kind of bring all my learnings and all my experiences to him and filter it through our conversations. But I think I'm sharing this to say, like, if you are out there and really set on evolving, changing, building your dream life, like, don't do it alone. You don't have to do it alone. And it's going to take a lot longer and be a lot harder. And that doesn't mean you have to get a coach. That is certainly something that I recommend if you have the time and the means and the ability and you really are serious about wanting to see shifts. But if you can't do a coach, like join a community, find a group, get your two BFFs together and like make some commitments and be accountability buddies. Like the journey alone will take a long time. The work that Brian and I have done in the past 2 years, I could have never gotten there in this lifetime. It would have taken a much different timeline. So I am incredibly grateful. You guys will understand exactly what I'm saying once you listen to this episode and get to experience his essence and his wisdom and his kindness and his generosity. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited to share him with you, excited to hear what things resonate the most with you guys, what you get out of this, what it sparks in you. As I've been listening back and editing, it has like just taken me down this whole rabbit hole of things I want to do for my business and brought some clarity. So as always with these expansive conversations, there's some really beautiful side effects. And I think we talk about the creative brain in our conversation. And I think these conversations just really allow the creative brain to activate and allow it to kind of like roam and go wild and really express itself. So that's my experience with it. Excited to hear yours, excited for you guys to meet, connect with, hear Brian. So grateful for Brian for spending his time with me and us to help us on our journey. This is certainly an expansive conversation. Please, if you liked this, rate and review, leave us some messages, shoot me a DM, let me know what parts resonate, and certainly share this with a friend, share this with your family. It will it will undeniably spark some interesting conversations. All right, guys, appreciate you all. Brian, thank you so much for your time. See you guys on the other side. Happy expanding. Brian, my friend, what a treat. Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here with you, Brooke.
Brian, I am so excited because we have had a 2-year relationship
Mhm.
with you as my coach, my mentor, my guide. And our relationship has been very one-sided. You know, and I honestly will tell you I struggle with that sometimes because
Mhm.
I care for you. I feel like I know you on a certain level, but I don't get the opportunity to ask you questions like you get to ask me. You don't, I ramble on about my life for our hour-long sessions, and I only get to hear a few minutes or seconds about your life. So this is an opportunity that I am really excited for.
Well, I'm excited as well, and I hear you, and yet I want you to know that the gift of our time together is that I receive as much as I give, and so over these last 2 years, being able to for us to have our conversations is really, it's been a rewarding and fulfilling time for me as well. So I hear where you say it's one-sided, but I just want to gently counter that it's rather than us being on opposite sides where we trade time, I feel like we're on the same side putting together puzzles and playing in the fields of what's possible. And so I receive as much as I
Yeah.
give.
I love that. We definitely play in the fields of what's possible. And I want to dig into that. But first, I want to take a
Hmm.
moment to learn a little more about you because
Sure.
I think you've had a very expansive life and you've experienced a lot of things that have all led you to be this incredible coach that you are. And so I'd love to learn a little bit more about that, starting with how and why did you get into coaching and how and why are you one of the few, I think you're one of like 4,000 actual like board certified
Mm,
coaches?
yeah, thank you. So, I got into coaching through difficulty, challenge, and life disappointments, all of
Yeah.
which conspired for the good, which is that I found my calling. But they were difficult to go through, and
Mm.
I'll tell you about two experiences that really were signposts along the way. One, I was an executive at a nonprofit consulting firm in the mid 90s, and I was being groomed to be the president for this organization, but I didn't know what I was doing. And I didn't know
Mm.
how to ask for help, and I didn't know where to find help. And so, as a result, after 18 months, I was fired from the position. After that, I went to work for Franklin Covey. And while I was at Franklin Covey, that's where I learned that there was such a thing called coaching that helped people to develop their underlying skills, to help them recognize the importance of vision, of principle centered leadership, of how to bring the full selves to whatever they were doing.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that I really been exposed to that. And it helped me recognize that, well, if I had had that kind of support as I was growing into the relationship as an executive, it might have had a much different outcome.
Yeah.
So I think that was the first exposure point. Fast forward, let's see, 7 years later, I'm in the University of Santa Monica Masters of Spiritual Psychology program. And I met a woman who was a coach, and I asked her, "Oh, well, what do you coach?" And she said, "Well, I coach people." I said, "Okay, well, that makes sense, but the only frame of reference, or at that moment, the frame of reference that I had was sports coaching,
Hmm.
which I think everybody can relate to in one form or another. Oh, okay, it's a sports coach, but that that has more of a tactical feel to it. So I said, well, how do you coach people? What are we doing here? And she described how she worked with her clients. And something inside of me recognized, wait a minute, I've been doing this kind of work for decades
Mm-hmm.
and I'm really good at it. And I said, well, tell me more about it. And she told me more. And I said, well, can you make a living with that? And she goes, oh, yeah, I make a good living at it. And I thought, okay, this sounds
Done.
interesting. I think I'm going to take some steps on this path. That was in 2004. That was when I took on my first client. So
Wow.
I've had a client, I've been a coach now for 21 years as
Wow.
of January. And what I love about it is I get to bring my organic self to every conversation and allow for whatever wisdom, guidance, support that I can provide based on where each person is so that they begin to see the biggest possibility for whatever area they're focusing on. And when they look at that one area, so it may be an executive looking at how to lead, all of the other areas of their life also expand. So it's the spillover effect. I know there's a spillover effect.
Right.
Sometimes they don't know that.
I often wonder what you know that we don't know. Like, like even our first initial calls, like I was having a very, I feel that I was having a very hard time even understanding where I was in
Mhm.
life, right? And articulating that, but I felt like you knew. Like you could see it. You knew. So what do most people think they're coming to you for versus what are they actually coming to you for?
I had two coaches who they refer to this process as the front door and the side door. And if you go into Home Depot because you're looking for a hammer, there's a sign that says Home Depot hardware. You know you're going to find a hammer in there. But if you go in there and all of a sudden you become fascinated with some of their workshops on how to paint the house, how to create a new space, you're learning something different than what you thought you were going to get when you walk in.
Hmm.
Most people come to me because they have something that they need to get a hammer for.
Yeah.
And it generally falls into relationship, health, finances, career, uh, leadership, performance, some way, something that feels like it's not quite aligned, not quite matched up to where they'd like it to be. I already know that it is not about that one thing. It's about what's present that is tying that one thing to all of the other things in their life. So I describe it as we can work on the fingers of the hand, relationships and health and finances and career, but I'm going to work on the palm because
Yeah.
then all of the fingers are
Yeah.
going to expand, they're going to grow, they're going to have a different level of possibility than if we're just focusing on one of those specifics. So, but most people are going to come through a front door of I need my finances aren't right, my health isn't up to par. How do I work with this? Yes, I can work with you on that, but I know that there's going to be more.
Why can't we see it? Like why don't we see it for ourselves?
Well, I'm in the process of getting a PhD in positive psychology and positive neuropsychology. And one of the studies shows that we encounter anywhere, and the number is vast, anywhere between 1.2 and 1 billion bits of information at any 1 second. And we can
Wow.
only isolate about 120
Wow.
out of 1.2 million up to a billion bits of information. We're just on sensory overload. Most of us in most of our lives are on sensory overload. And so, because the senses, it's like the screaming baby in the room. Eventually, you can ignore the screaming baby in the room, but eventually you're going to turn to the baby and go, what? What do you need?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's where we are in the sensory world, is that we feel like, wait a minute, something's wrong. I'm in discomfort. I'm in pain. I need to address this. And so we do that to the exclusion of all of the more nuanced callings that are asking for our attention. So if we drop something on our foot, 99.9% of our body is perfectly healthy and well. All of our attention goes to the pain in our foot.
Mm-hmm.
Rightfully so, but that's just the sensory world that we live in. But we know that there's something more than just, as it's called, the sensorium, just the five senses, and that requires intentional attention for us to listen to it, to learn from it, to feed it, to expand it. And that's, I know that that's part of the Expanders Club, is
Yeah.
how do we take that time intentionally and attentionally to feed that so that it expands, knowing that that's going to positively influence the rest of our lives.
Let's talk about the world beyond the five senses.
Okay,
Like,
that's my favorite stuff to talk about.
okay,
So heck
okay.
yeah.
Mine too, as you know.
Yeah.
Lead me into like your thoughts and beliefs, or like where would you start in that space?
I'll start with a disclaimer. I'll start with a definition, and I'll start with a story. Okay, so
Excellent.
disclaimer. For everyone listening and watching, the words that I use are going to be mine. You're going to have yours, and there's a reason why I'm saying this, because I'm going to use words fluidly, because that's how it makes sense to me, and it may not make the same sense to you. But what I want you to hear is the words behind the words, which are that the labels that we've been given oftentimes create distinctions where sometimes there is no distinction, and sometimes it's much more powerful not to hold the distinction that we've learned. So I'll get to that in a moment,
Okay.
but the definition, and I thought about this morning, about what is the beyond the sensorium, and we use words like mysticism, spirituality, magic, medicine, and that's what I mean. Somebody is going to have an idea of what magic is, and it's going to be a man in a top hat with a cape pulling a bunny out of a hat. That's just one. That's not the definition that I'm talking about, but
Hmm.
if that's your, hold it. If it doesn't make sense to you, that's okay. Just hold it gently. Hold the words gently and listen for what's beyond the words. But when I thought about what's beyond the sensorium and how do we access it,
Hmm.
we talk about any practice, substance, or ceremony that expands our awareness to have an experience of universal truth.
Mm.
That's what came to me. Any practice, substance, or ceremony that expands our awareness to have an experience of universal truth. And how do you know when you're having the experience of universal truth? For me, there's a sense of homecoming. Like,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
I'm home.
Yeah.
So that's the definition that I'll hold for our time together. The story is, I remember when I was raised Catholic, and I remember when I was about 7 or 8, and I had a conversation with a priest, and they were talking about confession, and I said, "But why do I need to talk to God through you?"
Yes. Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people, and I hear you agreeing with this. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who had that same question, but they were shut down because of whatever reasons, and
Hmm.
there's no judgment on the reasons. We have structures in place that exist with a certain hierarchy or with a certain set of rules, but rising up out of that at age 7 or 8 and going, wait a minute, there's a connection here that I don't need an intermediary for, that's beyond what I understand,
Yeah.
beyond what I've been told, but it's absolutely that sense of home that I spoke about earlier. And so having that thought, not being satisfied with the answer that I was given, and then recognizing that throughout my life, this is a through line of being able to know that I can immediately connect, and discovering and experimenting with different ways to do so.
Yeah. The I, I mean, we're not going to get started on organized religion, but I wasn't raised Catholic, but we went to church every Sunday. We went
Hmm.
to what was called the United Church in our neighborhood, and got to a point where stuff started not making sense. I mean, no kid wants to like get dressed up and get dragged out of their house Sunday
Right.
morning, right? Like there's a lot of better things to do. So there was that part. But stuff just like started to not make sense to me also. And one of the things was one of the women who was a big part of the church. She was a little bit older, or she seemed older to me at that time, you know. She was a big part of the church. She wasn't the pastor, but she'd get up and like speak, like, read out of the Bible. And she, would shake everyone's hands at the end of the day and stuff. This woman outside of church was awful. Like you'd be walking across the street to the store and she'd see you and she'd like speed up her car. She in the local like coffee shop and restaurant, none of the waiters wanted to wait on her. Like she was terrible.
Hmm.
And I finally said that to my mom one day. I was like, why do we have to go to church? I was like, the people, it was her and this like other family that I had noticed that like wouldn't give us the time of day at church. I was like, they're so nice to us when we're in the church, but then when we're out, they're awful. And I was like, why do we have to go to church? And my mom like didn't have an answer for it, and she never made us go again.
Interesting. Well, kudos to your mom for actually listening to the feedback that you were giving at whatever stage of life you were giving it. I'm not. I, people. Everyone has the right to do their thing. You do you. I'll do me. As long as there's not a harm or impingement on another person. Everyone has their beliefs, or their experiences, or their non-beliefs and their non-experiences. What I take away from your what you're sharing and what I've shared is that at a certain point we have discernment of what feels aligned and what doesn't feel aligned. And that is the moment of awakening or somnolence. We're either going to
Yeah.
go back to sleep and
Yeah.
just take as is given, or we're going to awaken to something that stirs. Now, it might take some time for it to develop to a point where I say, okay, this is what feels clear to me. Where do I go from here? And
Yeah.
that, I think, is part of the spiritual mystical journey that many of us are continue to go through on a daily basis. Not so much to find, but to uncover or to unfold, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you talk about this universal truth, like there is wisdom that we are all connected to that we have forgotten.
Hmm.
I believe that we were much closer to it at a different stage in our
Yes.
evolution, and I think for me and for a lot of us, that's where that's where the issues, the questioning, the awakening start to come in. Anything that feels disempowering does not feel like the universal truth, right? For me, this is just me speaking, any religion, any coach, any therapist, any belief system that is about other or praising other or giving your power outside of yourself has never felt true.
Hmm.
And I didn't always obviously have the ability to put words to that. It probably wasn't even until recently, but to me, that is like one of the biggest universal truths is like just the power that we all have. Then to go further, because we all are all one and are all connected and are all God, right?
Hmm.
But that's also a really big place to be. And you and I have talked about this. Like you can have that understanding, but it is still really hard to embody and fully process as a human, like these higher universal truths.
Yeah, yes, and we as humans want to understand so much that rather than simply being willing to experience, rather than
Mm-hmm.
always wanting to know, to understand,
Mm-hmm.
so we talk about the beyond the sensorium, and think about the things that are non-physical, non-provable. We can't see them, touch them, taste them, they hear them, but they're some of the most important things in life. Love,
Oh yeah.
peace, joy. I mean, it's no more, we can see the effects of it, just like we can see the effects of gravity. Otherwise, we're spinning off the planet. Magnetism. we can see the effects of these things, but we can't actually see them. Radio waves. We can't see them, but we accept that some things are true, but some things might not be true. And that's where I say, listen, if I experience it as true, it's truth. And it
Yeah.
feels like home to me, it's home. I don't care, frankly, if it doesn't to you. I love you as a human being, all of the yous as a human being, but if you don't come to that awareness, if that feels misaligned for you, that's okay.
Yes, and also like science has proven energy, right? Like
Right.
it's been proven that there is this energy field that we are all connected to, like
Hmm.
through science that has been
Right.
proven. And I know that's not information that like gets out there a ton. Certainly we're not taught that in science class in school. Um, but that's also to me like you know, it is like if you can wrap your head around science showcasing, like you can have that standpoint, right? You know that like if it's not proven it's not true, but now that science has proven that there is this energetic field that we're all connected to. Also, I believe science has proven that like the atoms or whatever it is, all the particles that we're made up of are like constantly like regenerating or like
Hmm.
disappearing and regenerating. Like this is crazy stuff. This is magic. Like
Right.
the opportunity, the fact that we are human and our molecules are just recreating themselves every tenth of a second or 10 whatever you guys google it, like whatever the actual science is, right? I'm
Hmm.
butchering it, but like the fact that we open our eyes and function the way that we do every day is this insane miracle, and like yet we've like lost so much touch with that.
Well, I think that there is deliberate reasons why that's happened, and then there are circumstantial reasons why that happened. There's deliberate
Hmm.
reasons why that happens is because we have the majority consciousness that says, okay, we accept that this is how life is, and anything counter to that becomes um, a threat, frankly. And so, even though there is the science, epigenetics shows us that you're not destined to live your genetic material from your parents, that there are ways that you can shift and influence how a body grows, responds, heals, all of these things. We know about non-local events. We know about the Maharishi effect. We know about so many things that show evidence, but it's constantly questioned so. But I think that you brought something up earlier that I want to go back to, Brooke, where you said there was a point where we were closer to the knowing, closer to the truth, and I put it in my notes as 0 to 10. 0 to 10, we were connected. How do we
Mm-hmm.
know we were connected? Observe any young child, and they are daydreaming, mysticism. They are talking to imaginary friends, mysticism. They are. I love teddies, teddy bears, and stuffed animals. That is a communication of pure love and pure support at times when that was needed. They're talking to animals and trees and leaves and butterflies and birds. That is modern mysticism. And up until the point where it's then society becomes socialized out of them.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's almost I haven't done a tracking this, but I'll introduce it as a hero's journey for us on the spiritual path. We start from 0 to 10 where we are connected. The wisdom is right there. We don't have to effort to discover what is beyond the sensorium. It's right there for us, and we believe it's true right until
Hmm.
it's socialized out of us. Let's
Hmm.
say that's by 10 years old. From 10 to 20-ish, 30, depending on the person, we're discerning what it is that we each believe, or like I said, it's either discernment or somnolence. I'm either going to sleep or I'm waking up to what feels true to me. There's a pivot point if we choose discernment where we have to be willing to be alone or in the minority for the rest of our lives. And it scares the crap out of a lot of
Mhm.
people, and they turn themselves off because as you know, I've heard said, you're either going to be alone and excellent or together in mediocrity.
Mhm.
And for those that are like, no, I know what's true for me, there's that inflection point of being willing to be alone. If they are willing to follow that path, then there's the re-emergence of this connection, but it's a re-emergence not of the childlike way, but of the adult way. And that's where we're having this conversation, is to recognize that you and I are part of that, where we had that moment of that inflection moment and said, I'm following my truth. And that is what I know to be true. And that is the gift. That's really the inspiration that we are to others, is to recognize that it may not be easy. You may not be among the populace, but you will feel at home with yourself because you know what you know is true, and you do not have to prove it to anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, like getting rid of that prove it energy
Hmm.
was a lot of it. And it is this proving, and I think I would describe a lot of it too as like an ego death. And of course my ego is still there, but a different version of it, hopefully, because if I look back, it was like most of my adult life the ego was running the show. And that's how I would describe it for my experience. How would you describe it for what you've seen in your 21 years of coaching?
The challenge of moving against the norm, of swimming against the tide, is what can either make us stronger or determine if we're going to find ourselves at home. Our search, it's really interesting. If you talk to young children and you talk to elders, soon before their passing, and the elders talk about the returning to their childlike ways.
Mm,
In the middle, we have this maze of navigations and maze of uh, different compensation mechanisms that we come up to try to ease the challenge of navigating the worlds that we're in. So the ego, remember the ego, while we say ego death, I put those in quotes because number one, the ego is part of us. It's not going to die. Number
yes.
two, it serves a positive purpose. The positive purpose is, how can I navigate this situation with as much ease as possible? But it only links to the sensorium, because this feels like this. I want to avoid this. And so this is what I'll come up with to avoid this, without recognizing that part of our growth journey is the discomfort, because that helps us grow stronger. We don't want it, but as you and I have talked about, the soul is wholly unconcerned with your level of comfort. Its purpose here in incarnating in your body and my body is to learn, to grow, to experience, and to share that with others. And it doesn't care if that happens through orgasm or cancer. It's just it's completely objective to that.
Yes, yes. And I understand that and believe it to be true. But why? Why couldn't we just go from, and I agree, like I have said to many times, like, man, I knew so much more when I was a kid.
Hmm.
Like I was so much wiser as a kid. And why can't we just go from that child wisdom to like our rest of the life wisdom? Like, why do we have to, I know this isn't the word you use, but why do we have to regress? Or why does the conditioning, the walls, the things have to happen to then where have to go through this transformation later in lives? At least this is the pattern that I see with my friends and the people around me, is like, God damn, like we have been through a lot. And great, we're transforming, we're rebirthing, we're getting back to, our universal truths, the knowing, but like why did we have to do that? And does my kid have to do that? Like, is there a different way for, can things be easier for them? Or is that what we are as humans, we're destined to have to go through trauma to like get to our fullest expression of ourselves.
I think we have to be mindful of what we refer to as trauma. I
Mm,
mean, obviously, there are some very, very specific cases where we can talk about that are truly traumatic, um, and others that are they traumatic or are they very difficult?
mm,
I
mm.
remember there was, in one of the Mission Impossible movies, and he said, "Well, this would be a very difficult, mission." And he says, "Well, it's a good thing that you work for Mission Impossible, not Mission Very Difficult." And so I think that what I take from what you're sharing is we can focus on the difficulty, and it's hard not to. Remember, drop something on your foot, 99.9% of you is fine. All of the attention goes to the pain in their foot. And or we can ask ourselves in quiet times of introspection, what is the lesson? What is the gift in the
Mm-hmm.
struggle?
Mm-hmm.
What is the gift in the struggle is what gives our struggle meaning. And what we're searching for is meaning. And what the soul or spirit is seeking is to provide meaning by virtue of the experience, whether it's a negative or a challenging experience or a pleasurable experience. What meaning can I take from this? How can I learn and grow from this? How can I share from this? So I think we also have to remember Pierre Teilhard de Chardin talking about that we're not human beings having a experience, we're spiritual beings having a human experience, but we are the pairing of both. We
Mm-hmm.
could have been floating around in our soul form in the unseen, unknown, unformed, and we would have that experience, but we incarnated to have an experience of being in this time, in this place, with these challenges, with these difficulties, to learn, perhaps to take that soul knowledge back to the collective so that the next generation, when they come through, they've learned from us. Now, we
Mm-hmm.
don't know how long the soul generations might be. It might be several lifetimes. So, yes, you can help and guide your daughter through the direct teachings, but you may be also learning these experiences so that you can 5 generations from now have someone come through and go, "Oh, I have some soul wisdom. I don't need to take this step or face this difficulty because my ancestor or my soul being
Yeah.
did that." So I think that that's a different way to think about it, but perhaps that's a more empowering way to think about it than "this sucks. I don't want to deal with this."
Yes.
And still
Yes.
have that reaction as well, because that's part of the
No.
human
Yes.
experience.
It is much more empowering. And for me, and I think a lot of us, we dealt with, I'll use the word trauma.
Hmm.
The real trauma we dealt with was when we were young and like didn't have control over it, right? So that's where it's like, that's where it always gets confusing to me. It's like, yes, I can make peace with like my soul chose this path. I know the lessons in it, and I'm so grateful for how it all turned out, right?
Hmm.
I don't want to go back to that and do it again. But I'm grateful for how it all turned out. And also there's still this like, what the hell? Like really, that's like how this is all drawn up? Like that's the process? Like, you know,
Yeah.
like, oh, and I do think that though, at least the circles that I experience of humans right now, like I do think we've done a lot of work in our generation, and I do think it's already being passed on to the generation that's, my daughter's generation. She will have a very different experience, have very different tools, going into adulthood than I did. And so it will be really interesting to see what their experience is like compared to what we've all um, you know, been through.
Well, I think we have to also talk about elevation and horizons. Elevation says, elevation in a spiritual context is that with enough elevation, I can see a wide enough horizon where I can see the growth that's happened. In the moment I'm in, and you and I talked about this literally yesterday in terms of frames in a movie, where it's like if I'm just stuck on one frame of film, then I'm just seeing what's happening there.
Mhm.
If I look at the
Mhm.
movie as a whole, I see how it's part of the entire story. And I think with elevation and horizons, we can look and see we've made phenomenal, I mean, just unimaginable evolutionary growth in so many different fields
Yeah.
in the last 50 years alone. I'm 58, so in my lifetime, you know, the growth in consciousness, in spirituality, in community, in healing, in recognition of different forms of mysticism, of happiness as it's been measured, there are phenomenal things. But that's only with a 50-year horizon. If we look at it over a course of 1,000 years, we have no clue what's possible in the next 1,000 years. So
Yeah.
I think that if it doesn't make the moment any less intense, but it does allow us to say that there is a context for the experience that we're having, positive and negative, in any moment that exists beyond that moment. It doesn't mean spiritual bypass. It doesn't mean I'm not, no, no, this is okay. It's no, sometimes you're
Mhm.
like, this sucks and I don't want to deal with it, but I have to deal with it. And yet, in the course of even a year, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years later, look back and go, that was horrible, but that was the most powerful cathartic experience that I
Yeah.
can imagine.
Yeah. That's where I find the power of journaling and reflecting, using the journals to reflect is like, yes, it's helpful in the moment, but also always when I look back, I'm like, huh, it worked out. It worked out exactly how it was supposed to, and even better than I thought it was going to,
For
and
sure.
like, and I'm grateful for those moments of hardship and difficulty, but it is an interesting journey, and I want to just like for a second simplify kind of what you do, because
Hmm.
to me you're guiding people through a transformation,
Yes.
right? And let's use me as an example. I show up and I think, there's a bit of a list of things that were going on, but I think that the high level was like, I'm burnt out.
Hmm.
Help. What is what's the transformation that's happening from there?
I'll answer that with the how of perception first, and then we'll back our way in. I assume and hold the space that we are multifaceted, matrixed beings.
Hmm.
Um, if we just look, and you know of my love of kaleidoscopes, if we just look through one lens, we see one picture as that is what is, without recognizing that very small shifts change the picture entirely. That's why the
Hmm.
kaleidoscope is such a powerful metaphor for transformation. We also, if we're just looking at one facet, so think of a diamond and it's multifaceted, and we're just looking at one facet of it, then we're missing the entirety of how the entire structure is together. So, yes, of course, if you come to me or someone comes to me and says, I'm efforting and I'm burnt out, I already know that has ripple effects throughout all areas of life
Hmm.
that are shrinking the field of possibility, shrinking the field of well being, shrinking the field of availability to possibility.
Yeah.
And so part of it is to look at the interactions between these facets. Now, some people are not, you, of course, were just absolutely primed to hear that. Most people are not. Most people are like, yeah, but I want to fix my fill in the blank. It's the
Yeah.
fixative mind versus creative mind. The fixative mind, as you and I have spoken about, is really, really good at finding your keys if you've lost your keys. I'm in the house. I changed clothes. I got something to eat. Okay, I'm in the house, so I have my keys to get in the house. So my keys are somewhere in the house. Now let me backtrack and find the answer to my question, where are my keys? It is terrible, not blaming it, but it's just not designed to create possibilities.
Mm.
There's a creative mind that we have that we access through things like intuition, like vision, like journaling, like reflective consciousness, to tap into the energy of vision and creativity that is perfectly suited to create all new possibilities, infinite possibilities, or choose from the infinite possibilities. But most people, when they come to coaching, they're like, I have a problem and I need to fix it. Okay, you're coming to me with a fixative mindset. I have to work and invite them to shift that kaleidoscope into the creative possibility,
Mhm.
into the creative mind. And that's what we did. And that's what I
Yeah.
do with most of my clients when they're open to it.
Yeah. I mean, the shift. Like the shift. Holy. The shift that we had. I mean, I don't even know that
Mhm.
person. I
Yeah,
don't know her.
yeah,
Um, it's kind it like makes it's a little bit heartbreaking.
hmm,
And also I'm so grateful for her and so grateful that she went and got help and knew that there was more.
yes.
Right? But the shift has been insane and like I would not, I still always evolving, always shifting. Um, but I didn't see this. I didn't see this version of me. She just like it wasn't on my radar and I think that's something too that you've helped me really bring into my field and my vocabulary is like letting go of these like grasps of these, manifestation is a big word in the spiritual language, like, but letting go of like the plotting and planning of this exact way or this exact way to be. And it's like you always say, like, this or something better.
Yeah.
And it's the perfect reminder that we like, if we believe in this universal connection and these things beyond the five senses and this like bigger, bigger world outside of what we see and touch and feel, like, how could we ever believe that our brain is coming up with the biggest, most expansive possible option for us? And that I just want to share that's like one of the things that it's really brought so much freedom, and so much more of an ability to surrender and trust into my world.
Well, you just mentioned three of the most powerful words that we have available to us, and which is surrender and power and trust. And none of those are sustainably available to us if we're just trying to get out of pain.
Mm-hmm.
And most people, and it's a certainly a function of 21st century living, are just trying to get out of pain.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they call that pain worry or anxiety or financial insecurity, food insecurities, health journeys, whatever they call it, it's so what I find is there are beings like you, Brooke, who see and recognize that I'm on a journey and the journey evolves and shifts and changes and grows, but it continues, versus a client that says, okay, I'll work with you, and at the end of 90 days, I want to have this problem be solved. Basically saying, I want to be out of pain. They will get just uncomfortable enough to get out of pain and then they will stop.
Mm.
And that's their choice. That's their right. And they may not be ready for the next deeper phase of work, but the patience that's required to truly own your growth is the piece that I think is the difference between those who thrive and those who are still just surviving, but in a little less pain than they were before they started.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's it kind of brings something up. So I have spiritual book club that I
Hmm.
run.
Yeah.
And our last book, I had someone drop out because she felt that she couldn't relate to the book. And she brought up this thought that hadn't crossed my mind. And I haven't had a chance to talk to anyone about it. So it's perfect
Great.
that you're here. But she felt like, she said, a lot of times I feel like spirituality is very elitist. And just as you were talking, it was, and very much so, I agree with if you are in pain in any way, like just even, I was just sick last week and like it was much harder to tap into spirituality, patience, all the things,
Right.
non-reactivity, because I was sick and wasn't feeling well. And that's just a small example. But yes, if you are in pain, if you, um, you know, have if you have these real day-to-day issues that you have to face and overcome, it is hard to then also, like, at least with, I think, the way life is set up currently, it is then hard to spend time evolving, spend time tapping into, you know, the mystic. Curious your thoughts on that around spirituality being elitist.
Well, I guess I don't really understand. Maybe you can tell me a little bit more what that statement meant to her.
Yeah, and I don't fully know. I guess what I processed is like, okay, the ability to kind of get out of your own way
Mhm.
feels like you have to have some means to do that, whether that is time, like some resources, you know, money, time, money to get a coach, money to get help, time, which, you know, usually if you have time, time is bought in some way, right? You kind of have to get over some of you have to have the basics covered, the, you know, Maslow's, whatever, like
Right. Sure, sure.
safety, stability, maybe not always safety, but you have to have some kind of stability. And so if you're someone who doesn't have the means for any of those things, or is in a, you know, really some really hard life patterns, it might be hard to access to get help for yourself. It might be hard to see beyond your day to day. And I think that's what I was kind of processing. Like, yes, pain can mean many things, right? If you have pain, it is hard to tap into mysticism. It is hard to feel empowered. It is hard to tap into your empowered. It's hard to make time to even think about even listening to the podcast and doing the research and things that we do. Um, so part of it has made me feel very grateful for the opportunity that I've had to do to be on my healing journey, right? And also I'm like, is it true? Because it is, a lot of this I feel like is our God-given right,
Right.
you know,
Hmm.
and we are born with this knowledge, but we are in a time and place where I think we have to work to uncover it. So if you don't have the means, or the availability to do that work, or, you know, I could see how it feels a little bit elitist, I guess.
I'm not relating it through that lens, but I respect that lens.
Yeah.
The 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 ability to access tools of growth, consciousness, spirit, magic, mysticism, fill in the blank, whichever word that goes back to my earlier word, whatever word suits you. On one hand, is more available today than in any other time in the history of the 4 billion year history of our planet.
Fair. Yeah.
There's free access to phenomenal teachers, wisdom, guidance, support, um, everywhere we go, and it would cost you nothing. So, a lot of the financial barriers from the old days that where it was only those who had access to wisdom schools and were going to pay to be a part of the wisdom school, otherwise you didn't have that wisdom art, have been removed. That said, there is the intention of, can this tool of spirit or consciousness help me, support me through the challenge that I'm facing that is causing me to make the
Mm-hmm.
statement that I don't have access to it because I don't have the resources to have access to it.
Mm-hmm.
For that, I would say, well, perhaps, because I don't know your individual situation, but here are perhaps some suggestions of ways that you can get the support that you need with low to no investment of the things that you feel like you don't have access to. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's a little bit difficult to say spirituality is elitist without a context for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's fair. It was
I
just
think it's
something
more
that
democratic now than ever before. I
yeah.
mean, you could just, if nothing else, you could just pop into Chat GPT and say, give me 10 ways that spirituality can help me feel better than I do right now, given this situation. And I say that tongue in cheek, but here's a story for you, Brooke. My wife has someone who she knows that was going through a very difficult time, and I took the story that my wife told me about this person and I fed it into ChatGPT and I said, what are some of the ways that, or what are some suggestions of ways that my wife could share with her to ease her concern? And within moments, there were 10 ways that talk to her like this, offer her this. And it's like, so we live in this, we can use the technology that's available to us to connect with the spiritual truth of our own nature and the nature of others to support us as we go through whatever challenges we're going through. So I think that that's one of the positive ways that we do have access to wisdom, that external wisdom that then triggers our connection to our internal wisdom that we haven't had in the past.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to just spend a quick second on that because
Mm-hmm.
it triggers something in me. You know, I've been having this internal conversation with myself about AI
Mm-hmm.
and about its role in spirituality because it seems to be AI is on the rise, obviously, but
Clearly.
its role in spirituality seems to becoming more and more interesting. And I see, you know, influencers talk about like, oh, use ChatGPT to open your Akashic records and use ChatGPT to tell you what your dream life is supposed to look like. And it doesn't feel that great to me. Like,
Right.
I think there's I think it's, useful for like time efficiency and there's reasons to use AI, of course. But I do have some concerns about, again, it feels very disempowering and it feels like this, you talked about creativity earlier, and it feels like the spiritual process
Mm-hmm.
is a creative process and it's about getting to know ourselves, right? And it's like it's all the twists and turns on that path that like lead to the expansion and the growth and the ability to have certainty and to surrender and trust and feel safe and all those things. How can we like shop that out to AI to do for us and have any real results?
Well, I think you're seeing the intersection of tools and humanity in this new way. So here's the story that I frequently talk about tools and humanity. I have a hammer and a rock. I can drive a nail. I can drive a nail with a hammer or the rock, but the hammer is specifically designed to hammer a nail. I can use a rock to drive a nail or to hit somebody over the head. It's how I use the tool. And so the tool itself is simply a tool. It has some elegant uses and it has some coarse uses, like using a rock to drive a nail. But I can still use it to the to facilitate what I want in order to support my humanity. So I see the same things you do, and AI is going to take over coaching. I'm like, never, ever, ever,
Hmm.
ever, ever.
Hmm.
The nuances of humanity are such that you will never program in. Now, can you have a AI coach? Yes, of course, there already exists, but it will never supplant the nuances of supporting, leading, guiding, and supporting another human being. And
Oh,
neither in the spiritual world,
yeah.
it'll never understand spiritual experience, magical experience, mystical experience, consciousness. You can feed all of the books into it at once, and it's just going to sort of connect, replicate, and regurgitate what's in the books, but it's not going to have the experience. Life is about experience. The experience then gives us source for us to build context and constructs around so that we can communicate that into books that then are fed into ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't think we have to worry, but we remember the intersections of tool and humanity and the intersection of tools and humanities in 21st century, especially 21st century Western cultures, is how can I do this to make it easy for me to make money
Yeah. Yes.
or
And
influence people to do
yeah.
what I want them to do?
Yeah. Yeah. And yes, first of all, I feel like coaches and psychics are the only jobs that are safe. Like from AI,
Could
like,
be, but damn good
um,
thing that we're involved in that.
exactly, exactly. They're on the list, and it's a short list for sure. In my office, the office space that I share, there's a digital marketing guy that was showing me, I guess there's some new AI now that can convert photos to like stop motion or something, and he was showing me, and I was like, dude, do you? And he was excited playing with it. It's like, bro, I think your job is in danger. Like, don't get so excited about AI. You're a digital marketer. I feel like AI is going to be doing that tomorrow, if it's not already.
For sure. I'm
Um,
sure it
Mhm.
already is.
Yes. Um, why do you feel this?
Mhm.
I feel this. Do you feel this that there's like this awakening happening, like a larger awakening? And again, you've been part of this world for 21 years and been paying attention to the collective. Have you seen a shift, or are you seeing or feeling a shift?
I'm seeing a shift. I'm feeling a shift. I'm excited about a shift. And yet there's also I won't even say equal and opposite, but oftentimes greater and louder reaction to the
Yes.
shift.
Yes.
I think that we have to remember that self-awareness as a widespread um, sort of phase of consciousness is really only 40 to 50 years old. Again, our
Mhm.
lifetime. For thousands of years up until that point, it was not, it was life was so difficult that there was not the luxuries of having time to introspect and to look
Mhm.
to expand and create a thriving life. It was more about survivability. So we're still fighting against that tide, and that was even, in again into the probably the 70s, 60s, and 70s, where there was this awareness of expanded consciousness. A lot of it was the drug culture. A lot of it was the counterculture to the war culture. A lot of it was free expression, summers of love, and those were sort of when the quantum leap started to happen. So let's say the late 60s. So we're really only about 50 years into this process. So again, what I talked about in terms of elevation and horizon, um, I think it is phenomenal, the growth and expansion that has occurred in these seeds that were planted in the mystery schools of Egypt 5,000 years ago, and other places that still are threads that are being discovered, uncovered, evolved, and implemented in the world today. That is phenomenal. And we look at that lens versus the film and go, yeah, but look at all of the crap that is in resistance to it, and going, yes, but we know where this is going to eventually get to. There's going to be a tipping point or critical mass of self awareness and self acceptance and embodiment of connection that eventually that's where the evolutionary impulse is going. Now, I don't know if that's going to take 100 years or 100,000 years. No idea. But I know that you're playing a part in it. I'm playing a part of it. Everyone who's listening and watching this is playing a part in this evolutionary tipping point. And that's all we can do is we can
Mhm.
focus on what
Mhm.
part can I play in this and how can I shift my life, the lives of those in my inner circle, the lives beyond my inner circle, into this state of connected knowing and self-awareness, self-acceptance, and expanding and aspiring into our highest form of living. And if and as I do that, then I'm planting a seed that who knows how long it'll take to germinate, but it will germinate
Yeah.
either on this level or the soul level.
Yeah. My soul is very concerned with the collective, and
Yeah,
it's a frustrating experience.
sure.
a little bit as a human, where
Hmm.
I'm just like, I really
Spiritual
just,
being having the human experience. This is the human experience. Yeah, I understand.
let's talk about fate versus destiny, because
Mhm.
I think this is a really empowering subject and concept for people to
Hmm.
understand. So share your perspective on
Fate versus destiny. Nice small table topic there of
it.
as they said in the movie Finding Forrester, and not a soup question, not a question that you're gonna define over a bowl of soup. So fate
We
versus
gotta help. We gotta help people. We
okay, so
gotta,
fate versus
give them the real.
destiny. Um, I don't think that they're counter to each other. I think they're complement to each other. I feel like we each have, and this is some of this is based in the David Hawkins' work Power versus Force, where he talks about we all have, paraphrasing, we all have the ability to fully express ourselves to, 1,000 on the Hawkins scale, to be the avatars of, Jesus, Buddha, Kuan Yin, whomever someone identifies with as the fully expanded, fully expressed human spiritual beingness. We have experiences in our life that can, don't have to, but can disconnect us from that full expression. But the potential within us is that we can be that fully expressed. We can arise into this avatarness. Some believe in one lifetime, some believe in multiple lifetimes. It's up to them to decide. So, fate and destiny, in my mind, is how, if I recognize this and if I accept this as true, what can I do in a moment to moment, breath to breath, heartbeat to heartbeat moment to be as fully expressed into the wholeness of my potential and allow that to guide me to the next moment, the next heartbeat, the next breath?
Yep. Yep.
I can't look down the line and say, by the time I turn 75, I'm going to be fully expressed. That's now I've put a timeline and an ego and efforting into it. To
Yeah.
me, the destiny and the fate and this and stepping into this potential is not about efforting, it's about becoming. It's about, it's the fullest expression. It's the, acorn that becomes the mighty oak. It doesn't effort to become the oak tree. That's the potential. That's the pattern within it fully expressed. That's what I think each of us has the opportunity in one or many lifetimes to explore, to embody, to evolve and express. So I don't know if that answered the question at all, Brooke, but that's what comes.
It did. And let me like maybe summarize and see if I'm getting it right. Like yeah, we have this ability for our fullest potential, right? Like that is out there. And then in every moment we get to choose, are we going to choose the timeline that gets us to that fullest potential? And a way that does that sound correct?
Yes. Yeah.
A way that I've like use it for myself personally and have talked to my clients about it is like you choosing the light in every moment,
Hmm.
right? And it's almost you have to for me it's been the practice of removing reactivity and allowing a little bit of space and a little bit more slowness in the way in my life in the way that I operate so that I have the 10th of a second or whatever it is to process like is what I'm about to say, is this a decision I'm about to make, is the action I'm about to take, is that of the highest light, is that closest to the light, is it the highest timeline? And it's not perfect at all, but that's the opportunity that and just like you talked about, like you can't plan it out for the future, it's like literally in the moment.
Hmm.
In every moment are you choosing you get the opportunity to choose the highest timeline.
Yeah.
And
I think that's right on the money, and you talked about the space and the space to decide. And the other thing that I would offer into your sharing is the invocation of grace.
mm,
Grace that I'm not always going to make the best decision. I'm not always going to make the highest decision. That's the human experience.
yeah,
Spiritual being,
yeah.
human experience. There's going to be the spiritual being that is fully connected right to the moment that somebody cuts me off in traffic and then I'm flinging a finger at them. That is my human experience. It comes in. It's part of the deal of incarnation. So I think invoking that grace, that, and it's not, I'm unfolding, I'm not striving for that full expansion, full expression. I don't have to. I mean, if I don't get it in this incarnation, I assume that I'll return to soul form, bringing back the wisdom and experiences that I had. And if I get another chance at it, then I'll do that. If not, if it's a soul download where we just download into the collective, then we'll download both the moments that we're fully expanded as well as the ones where we gave somebody the bird because they cut us off on the 405. It's okay. We just have how to give ourselves the grace to be I'm simply human paired with my spiritual self, and in the human moments I just reacted humanly. I don't have to hold myself to superhuman expectations because that is just inviting the ego to jump in.
Yeah. Oh, yes, 100%. And I think for me, it's been exciting to see the awareness of that because, again, I am
Mhm.
not choosing the light in every moment.
Mhm.
And to just bring an awareness to it
Mhm.
is been very rewarding. And also, okay, if I didn't choose the light that moment, I get another opportunity
You
in the
get
next
another
moment.
opportunity. It's not, as long as it's not the last moment, and even that, who knows? Yeah, you get another opportunity, and that's how we learn and grow. Is we learn and grow through experience, and that's if that's how it is in the human world. I'm going to assume that that's part of the incarnated agreement as well. Is I'm incarnating so that I can learn through experience, not through. I mean, because in the unseen, unformed, highly connected, all wise, all knowing, omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, then I know all of this already, but I want to know it through experience. And so that's why when we have an experience and it's like this experience sucks or this experience is awesome, remember it's knowing through experience rather than pure knowing. And to my belief, that's how we incarnated, or why we incarnated.
Yeah. So let's touch on that real quick. What is our purpose? What is the purpose of life? What is our soul's purpose?
Wow, again, another soup question. What is our soul's purpose? Is to experience individually life as a finite being so that we can experientially take that wisdom back to the soul collective for the good of one and the good of all.
Yeah.
Um, that's about as I don't know. That's about as general a discussion I could say
No.
about our sole purpose. What I will say is going back to what I said earlier, and the small print on that is your soul is unconcerned with your level of comfort because it's here for experience. And I had this, and I learned or intuited this through a really difficult experience of my own that I think I've shared with you, Brooke, but maybe I haven't. Of a friend of mine, many years ago, who lovely human being, just soul embodied love and joy. And over the course of 6 months, she somehow contracted lung cancer, even though non-smoker, vegan, lived in Ojai, and she passed. And it was very difficult for me. And 2 years later, I was in meditation, and I had the insight come to me. Oh, of course Maha would pass from this. She was always a seeker, an explorer, doing new things, and her soul just wanted to know what it was like to have terminal
Mm.
lung cancer. And I wept. And from that day forward, it completely transformed to where when I think of her, I'm like, oh, Mahat, that was so Mahat that she passed on. Her soul was unconcerned with the mortality of her being because it wanted to know what it was like to have this experience. Now, of course,
Yeah.
there's the human element to it. Of course, there's the loss and the grief and all of those things and the diminishment of her body. But the soul, if you're asking me what the soul's purpose is, the soul's purpose is to grow through experience and to share that wisdom with the soul collective.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot to, yes, it feels right. And also it's a lot to process as a
It
human,
is.
you know? Yeah. And also it is kind of freeing.
Mhm.
If you can like make peace with it, I think it is like quite freeing and it's just like cool, take me on the ride and like let's find the most joy, the most expansion, the most like ease and flow and gratitude for this journey.
Well, it's hard because we walk between two worlds, or we stand between two worlds, the soul world and the human world, and uh, Joel Goldsmith refers to the pairs of opposites that we go through life, good, bad, right, wrong, the pairs of opposites, and they're in opposition to each other. And very rarely do we recognize the harmony between it's either soul or body, whereas if in moments, pinprick moments, we do recognize,
Mm,
wait, this is soul and body. This is
yes.
not that I'm not in opposition, but when difficult things happen, we tend to fall back into the pattern of the pair
Yeah.
of opposites. Oh, either this is good or this is bad, or the other way around. And so again, that's where grace comes in to recognize that I I can hate quote unquote hate what's happening in the moment, but I may recognize that this is actually for my good. And it
Yeah.
may and there are tools to do that that I think are you mentioned journaling. I think is something that's very important for us to recognize that there's the moment and there's the horizon. And when you look back and go, oh my gosh, yeah, I was going through it there, and oh my gosh, this is what came out of it, then there's a different meaning. There's a shift in that kaleidoscope so that we're no longer looking at it through the same lens that it happened in, but through a different lens where we recognize that there was expansion that came out of it. Then there's meaning.
Yeah. What's your favorite personal tool that you use for
Oh,
yourself?
I thought about that because it's I think going back to one of the points we made earlier about the terminology of magical and mysticism and medicine. I mean, we could talk about earth medicine or plant medicine, and people have an idea of the word medicine, not recognizing that medicine as a word existed in indigenous cultures for thousands of
Mm,
years before it became the medical
yeah.
field. And so
Yeah.
if you're talking about plant medicine, you can be looking at ayahuasca or peyote or sage or mushrooms or that opened us up to an expanded experience of our true nature. Stone medicine and ceremonial medicine like sweat lodge ceremonies. So
Hmm.
it's interesting. Your question is a really interesting one because it depends on what frame of life I'm in. If it was
Mm.
20 years ago when I was doing sweat lodges probably 2 or 3 times a month, it would
Oh,
be a
wow.
very different experience. I would be talking about a very different tool than I am at this stage of life. But I think maybe one of the things that I would offer slightly different than the question you're asking me, Brooke, is sometimes there are tools that we have that we don't recognize as tools. I am a big fan of talismans. And when you think about
Yeah.
talismans, you're thinking about, Indiana Jones or Lara Croft going and finding this talisman in the temples in No, talisman is anything that is personally important to you that connects you to the feeling that you want to feel. So I'm often wearing, mala beads that help
Yeah.
me connect. And I have this stone. It's a stone. There's nothing special about it. But this stone I have used probably for the last decade. Anytime I'm going to have a difficult conversation, a frightening situation that I'm going into,
Mm,
I have brought it into when I've held it when I am had to call and, let someone know that I'm sorry about their grieving a loved one. Anything that has a personal meaning to you or I that allows us to connect with what we need in the moment from the realm of the spiritual
yeah.
truth is a talisman. And so it could be a family heirloom where you're like, I really love this. My grandmother gave to me this. I'm going to wear this or I'm going to hold this. And I share that because it's such a simple but very powerful way for us to connect with the truth that already exists within us. So I'm a big fan of talismans. I would say that. Invocations, the power of word. To We as a culture in 21st century use words so
Yes.
carelessly. And words that are very important become neutralized. Think of the word self-care. It's critically important to each and every one of us to the caring of the self. But over the last couple of years, self-care has been like, so book yourself a spa day. I have nothing
Yes.
against spa days. I love spa days. But self-care might also be like how to keep yourself from having a panic attack. I mean, and so being very, very conscious of how we use words, because words have meaning and power and vibrations associated with them. And we know this certainly through Dr. Emoto's work with the crystalline structures of water and how they relate to different words.
Mhm.
So there's plenty of scientific proof to this that, but if we're just carelessly throwing our words around, we're disempowering ourselves. So, being intentional before I speak my word has power. And there's two. Here's an example of how this moved from childhood to adulthood. If we think about two of the words associated with magic from our childhood, abracadabra, open sesame.
Mm.
In their ancient roots, the word abracadabra in Aramaic, ancient Aramaic translates to "I create as I speak."
Oh, wow.
I create as
That's
I
cool.
speak. That's what abracadabra means. Open
Okay.
sesame in the original Arabian Nights stories in the original language was open sesame. It was a
Mm.
command. It was an invocation for this magical portal to open. So we've learned these things and we still have these sayings but they've lost their power if we don't reclaim that. And that's claiming the power of our invocation of our words. So being very, very thoughtful, even if you, as I've done here, even if you pause for 5 seconds and it's uncomfortable for everyone until the right word comes into intuition,
Yeah.
that's what's required to maintain the power of words.
That is something you've brought into my life, and I really appreciate, and is very much a work in progress for me, but it does shift things. It shifts the energy, it shifts the vibration. You know, it probably annoys my husband. It definitely annoys my husband a lot because I'm like, oh, don't use that word. you know, um, probably a more productive way for me to help him understand what I'm talking about. I'm going to definitely make sure he listens to this episode. But yeah, that is something that I love about you, how thoughtful you are with language, and the power of the word and the power of language is so, it's so true and so obvious. And yet it's like we just have lost it a bit.
Well, it requires self-awareness because if you use a word like trust, you can feel the energy
Mm.
rise. If you use a word carelessly, you can feel the energy deplete. So some of it is the self-awareness that not all words are utterances of sound. That even utterances of sound, there's a reason why Om has a vibration,
Mm.
and that when we say it and we see it, that our whole skull and our whole being starts to vibrate. Every word has a vibration. Are we aware of it or not? Are we aware if it is expansive or depleting? Are we tuning it into ourselves in a way that's either expansive or depleting, or sharing it with others in a way that's expansive or depleting? That is the nuance. It's not going to scream to us. It's going to nuance and say, hey, there's power here if you choose to tap into it. But slow down, listen, and be willing to speak your word with power.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And actually, I'm just kind of processing this in real time. I think that you bringing that awareness into my life has really impacted the way that my daughter uses language. Like if you're around her, she has this way with words that is just, feels like it's at a very different level, a
Mm-hmm.
very different vibration. And just the words she chooses to use are just very expansive words. It's really interesting. And sometimes I'm like, where does she get that from? And then I hear myself speaking that way too and around her,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's not necessarily the language I would use if it was just my husband and I in the room, or if I was talking with friends. It's like I do have a heightened awareness because I want to have a certain impression
Sure.
for her. And I think that our time together has really helped influence that. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And that's an energetic connection. She's responding to the words, but she's also responding to the energy of the words, the word
Yeah.
behind the words
Yeah.
that I mentioned earlier, which
Hmm.
is, and you're expressing with her clearly, and your intention is to empower her. And
Yeah.
so the words that
Yeah.
you use have an empowered vibration that she's picking up and she's mirroring. This is where we go into the psychobiology of mirror neurons, is it, but in a but also in an spiritual energetic sense of mirroring the energy that's coming towards us. And we all know people who were lovingly spoken to and supported as children, and then we know people who were criticized as children. And it's not, it doesn't predestine that for the lifetime, but it does establish a different level of energetic resonance.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if you are already setting a high energetic resonance with your daughter, that's amazing. That's beautiful. That's she won't have to overcome that because she'll already have that band of resonance inside of herself.
Yeah, and just a moment of self-reflection, like isn't it so interesting that I or we like we can do that for one person in our life, or I do that and operate that way with and toward her, but I don't do it for everyone,
Hmm.
you know? And it's like it is a choice, right? Like it's a choice to put in the effort to have that experience with her. And it, it's probably a goal that I should and will be working toward, like having that experience with everyone that I interact with, like being thoughtful about my communication, helping to empower them, like having a non-reactive and thoughtful conversation. Like what a good reminder that we have the ability to do that, and we can make the choice with every interaction. It's like, will you or won't you?
Well, remember too that we have the choice of how we communicate. We Right now, your daughter's at an age where she's probably pretty spongy. Like, she'll meet you and
Yeah, yeah,
absorb what you're saying. When it comes to adults, they're at whatever they're at whatever they are in
yeah,
terms of sponginess, and we're at whatever level we are in terms of how we communicate, and sometimes that gap is just too big.
yeah,
It
yeah,
doesn't mean that there's not a capability, but what happens sometimes in the moment is that we will lower our vibration to try to meet them where
hmm
they're at, as
hmm
opposed to inviting them up. And if they are not willing to absorb, we still don't know that they haven't absorbed because we always plant seeds. And
yeah,
so, again, our work is to be our most expanded self in any moment, maybe not every moment, but any moment that we can, to relate and communicate in that way. And if not in that moment, perhaps at some other moment, that seed that we plant will elevate them into a higher
yeah,
level of their
yeah,
expression wherever they are. But we may not see it, we may not know it, and but we have the choice of how we show up. We don't have the choice of how the person shows up.
yeah, yeah. Holding that, we're in a new place, meeting all new people. It's an interesting opportunity to figure out how to hold that expansion,
Mhm.
and be comfortable in it when meeting new people,
Can you hold
and
an
being in new
expansion and be
spaces.
uncomfortable in
Yes. I
it?
mean,
No one guaranteed that it was going to be comfortable being our true
yeah,
self. I
yeah,
say that with all love because you know there's so many different dynamics that we run into with new people, and some of it is geographic, and some of it is, you know, political, and some of it is, there's so many different ways that there is that there are dichotomies but if we hold true to our authentic selves and we seek to be authentic in any moment, every moment that we can, then however the response goes is
hmm
outside of our caring, frankly, because we're not going to shapeshift to be something for someone else.
And I think that is the key that you said, can you hold on to being your true self? To be honest, I'm still figuring out
Mhm.
what who that is, and I've come a long way on the journey, but I think that's a big part of the work that you do is helping people understand what that true self is. And so, you and I, as we guessed, we could talk for hours, and there's a million things we could go into,
Right.
but I want to help people understand. I know you have books, you have programs. Like, how can people work with you through their transformation to be able to find their true selves, to be able to help with all the things that you do help with?
Well, I think the easiest way to access me is through the website, which is www.brianevanscoach.com, or drop me an email, brian@brianevanscoach.com. Um, Here's what I will say, Brett. I spend a lot of time in the early going of offering conversations with anyone about anything for the purposes of determining if I am the right person to help them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I know that is oftentimes a something that people hesitate to reach out, is that they think it's going to be a sales job. I do not do that. I do not do that.
Yes.
As those who are listening know, this is my soul work, and I apply my soul principles to it. My soul principles are: can I help you with what you say that you want to change, or what we discover together would help you expand your life? And so I offer full 60-minute conversations with anyone who's interested, because that's how we would coach together. I want you to have that experience. and there's no pressure at any point along the way. I hope that you receive what you need from any of the conversations we have. But what's most important is, are we a fit to work together? Can I help you with what you say you want? And can you learn and grow as a result of our conversation? So I do have social medias. All my social media handles are at Brian Evans Coach. But really, let's just have a conversation, because
Yeah.
social media is just social media, but real heart to heart, soul to soul connection, that happens through voice. And so I just welcome an opportunity for anyone listening or watching to just let's explore and discover if there's some way that I might be able to help you.
Yes, I love that. And I will link all of those things.
Thank you.
And you have a book
I do. I do.
where yes.
I do. Do I have one close enough that I could hold it up? Yeah, I do somewhere. Anyway, you
This
caught
book
me by surprise, bro. I do have a book. I recently wrote a book called Legends Rising: Creating the Modern Man. And the reason that I wrote the book is, as I mentioned, I'm in my late 50s, but I have had conversations with men over the last couple of years that are going through a lot of the same kinds of transitional challenges between the ages of about 35 and 55 that I have gone through, or I have friends who are going through, and it looks like sometimes it's divorce, sometimes it's a health issue, sometimes it's just that they're having this sense of life of, is this all that there is, or where am I going from here? And what I would say is there are very specific stages of life that we go through where some of the challenges that you're facing are known and expected, and there are actually some very simple, straightforward strategies to move through them. And that's what the book
Mhm.
speaks to.
Mhm.
Also, the other thing is, men don't tend to engage in coaching and support as frequently as women do. And so I wanted to have a male voice that they could come
Yeah.
to hear it from, so that we can talk through how to move them from where they are to where they want to go.
And a thank you from myself and all the ladies who, are
Well,
try to force our husbands into their evolution, their spiritual journey, their awakening. Because it is a really great tool. Dennis is finishing it up right now. And I think I've gifted it to a couple of my male friends. Like, I think that they're in general, as from my perspective, it does feel like there's almost this lack of support, this lack of conversation in the male world. Like, I have, book club. I have literally like 3 or 4 different clubs that I'm a part of that are for women, and we talk about these things. It's not always spirituality, but we're talking, about these general concepts. And I feel like there's a different level of support for women out there, probably because we are more open to
yeah.
having the conversations than there are for men. But like, let's make these conversations available to them. And I think that the more the information's there, and like you said, it's like a 60-page book, it's like super accessible,
Yeah.
it looks very masculine, it's written by a man. Like, this is definitely something, ladies, that you can get your husband or partner to read, and start the conversation, start their wheels turning.
Well, thank you for saying all that. Yeah, it's intentionally written to basically answer 3 questions. What are the challenges look like? What might they look like in your life? What to do about them? And I wrote it because I know that guys are not going to read anything more than 100 pages. So I wanted to have it that straightforward. But then the last thing you touched on, which I'll mention, is in the world of consciousness coaching, spirituality, there's women are far more receptive to engaging what's
Mm,
available. And so a lot of the spaces that we're in are women coaching women, women coaching men, men coaching women, but there's not very many spaces where men are coaching men. And that's
mm,
why I wrote this book, was to let others know that, listen, there it's just a dynamic, but it's a dynamic that you don't often see, but it is available to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Um, okay, last question.
Sure.
Even though I have a million more for you, you have 10 seconds with someone to say, whatever feels the most impactful, most profound from all your years of coaching, all the experiences you've had that will have an impact on their life. What do you say to them?
I see what's possible for you. Do you see what's possible for you?
Mm,
And if the answer is no, I would say,
mhm.
then let's have a conversation about how I might be able to hold that possibility long enough and clear enough for you to step into it.
Yeah, that made me tear up a little bit. Yeah, yeah. I very much feel that from you. Every conversation.
Mm.
Like, I thought I was thinking big about my possibilities, but Brian's got my back, and it's
No matter
Brian
what.
sees it even bigger, sees it even bigger. So,
Mm.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
mean, thank you for your time today. You have, where would I be without you? I don't, it doesn't matter what the answer is because we don't have to find out.
Right.
But I will tell you, you have just played such an impact on my past 2 years, my evolution, my ability to, I feel like I've been on this really exciting rocket ship of expansion, and having your support and guidance through it has just been it, it's been incredible, and I wouldn't, I would be in a much different place without you. So thank you very much.
And thank you for always showing up fully as you are.
Yeah.
As I said before, I'm grateful. I get so much out of our time, and I'm overjoyed that you are being and becoming who you truly are.
Thank you, sir.
You're
Well,
welcome.
much more to come. We'll see. We'll
Yay.
see where this ride takes us. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We've got so much wisdom, so many great nuggets out of this. I can't wait to re-listen myself, but this is definitely one that is good for, good to share on the text chain, the friends text chain. This will start some good conversation, and pass this one along to your husbands, to your partners, your male friends in your life that need to or would benefit from hearing some of this information. So thanks for hanging out with us, guys. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Appreciate it, bro.
All right.